Lawmakers of the ruling coalition have rushed through the first steps in committee to approve the so-called General Water Law, which will hand over the distribution of the precious resource and control of infrastructure to private companies. Advisors to the opposition call the legislation a blatant move to privatize the basic necessity.
Now it's about private companies controlling the means of distribution and those private companies becoming owners of the water. At the time, they won't make the resources public, but rather it will be available to the mining industry or the hydraulic fracturing industry, which is atrocious.
Legal analysts who object to the law, such as Dr. Maria del Carmen Carmona, says it is a step backwards for Mexico. She says previous legislation prioritized water for human consumption, well-being, and a basic right. But now lawmakers have twisted this interpretation.
They confuse what is of national interest with the legal nature of water as a national right. And that is different to the interests of the Federation. For example, in this case, the interest of the Federation can be its energy reform and so on, instead of safeguarding the Constitution as a principle that respects general, social, and public interests.
For Carmona, this prioritization of consuming water for private energy or mining sectors will not trickle down to the entire population and will ultimately produce grave consequences.
The basic problem is that if there is no more gasoline, there are substitutes. But if there's no more water, there are no substitutes.
While the legislation guarantees at least 50 liters of water per day per person, the two experts warn that the law does not guarantee the protection of environmental and nutritional rights that will inevitably be affected. The legislation will be debated in the full House starting on Tuesday. Meanwhile, environmental, indigenous, farm worker, and social organizations are calling for mass mobilizations so as to kill the bill. Clayton Khan, Telesur, Mexico City.
Yesterday, Brazil's Supreme Court named a long list of politicians under investigation in the corruption scandal affecting the state oil giant Petrobras. 22 representatives and 22 senators' names appear on the list, including the presidents of both chambers. The judges accepted the prosecutor's request to remove their immunity, considering there was enough evidence to justify the measure. A dozen other politicians, including from the ruling Workers' Party, have been named. President Dilma Rousseff is backing the investigation, wanting to get rid of corruption from the important public company. French President François Hollande announced this week he will visit Cuba on May 11th, the first visit ever by a French president, and the first by a European or U.S. leader since the U.S. blockade began over 50 years ago. As Cuba and the U.S. have begun normalizing diplomatic relations, the EU has started to appear as a competitor for the U.S. in terms of investment and trade with the island.
Cuba and the EU have had 25 years of many ups and downs, with a relationship that is very vulnerable to external factors, and very weak because it had no legal basis.
Una relación muy vulnerable a factores externos, una relación débil, si se quiere, débil porque no estaba sustentada sobre una base.
And that's what they're trying to achieve now with the signing of an agreement, a contractual basis for the relationship.
In Gaza, a small group of young Palestinian painters have started their own art project, turning the remains of Gaza's destroyed buildings to memorable pieces of art. Khazem al-Zammar, Muhammad Handam, and Ilham al-Astal are three very close friends and the founders of this impressive project that is called Memories. These young Palestinian artists spend about 4 hours a day collecting materials from the ruins of houses that were destroyed in Gaza during Israel's last summer offensive. Then they return back to their humble 3x3 square meter workshop in Rafah city in southern Gaza and began to start the recycling process to create their art pieces.
We found ourselves in this project, and we knew that what we wanted to do as artists was to give something back to the families of Gaza. So we thought of this idea, to take things that were buried in the ruins of a destroyed home and then remake them in a way where it brings joy to your heart. This way, we will remember the victims, but in a good way.
Asbestos shingles, damaged doors and windows, baby shoes, Teddy bears, photo frames, stones, flags, and even blood-stained sand have been collected by the artists, all to create their own version of memorial pieces in order to gift it to the families of those who were killed during the Israeli protective edge operation on the coastal enclave last year. The artists of the Memories Project have been collecting thousands of segments over the past months, and their artistic achievements will be shown in one of Gaza's local art galleries on April 2015, where over 100 families will receive art pieces from the group, reminding them of their loved ones that were killed by Israeli attacks in July-August 2014 war. Ruha Razin, Telesu TV, Gaza.
In world news, 5 people were killed in a surprise gun attack this morning in Mali's capital, Bamako. 1 child and 2 foreigners were among the dead, after 2 gunmen stormed an upmarket restaurant. 9 others were wounded. While Mali's north has long been plagued by violence linked to a decades-old struggle between Tuareg separatists and the Malinese government, the city of Bamako has been largely spared from the unrest. The surprise gun attack comes as the government and Tuareg say they are close to thrashing out a peace settlement. The Islamic State group has destroyed yet another treasured archaeological site, the Iraqi government said earlier today. According to Iraq's tourism ministry, the militant group has used explosives to raze the 2,000-year-old ruins of Hatra, a site recognized as World Heritage by UNESCO. Hatra was widely regarded by archaeologists as the best-preserved city of the Parthian Empire, but was also famously used as the setting for the opening scene of the iconic 1970s horror movie, The Exorcist. Finally, the wreckage of one of the largest battleships ever built has been found off the coast of the Philippines. Yesterday, divers released footage of the wreck of Japan's MIJMS Musashi, which is one of just 2 Yamato-class battleships ever built. The Yamatos were the heaviest battleships ever built at the time of the Second World War, and boasted the largest caliber guns ever fitted to a ship of that era. The Musashi was sunk by the U.S. Navy in 1944, but is still recognized as one of the greatest feats of naval engineering in modern history.
Facts that have marked the course of history. Productions designed in the English language and made for the English-speaking world. This is Documentary. Watch it on telesur.net/English. Telesur, wherever the news, you'll be there.